Secondly, let's talk a little bit about these triggers. So I've talked about the removal of the triggers. So triggers could be a micro movement, which is an instability through the spine, and then the muscles can stabilize that by activating. It could be a posture. It could be a seated posture, could be a standing posture, could be technique used within an exercise. It could be the load that's used. So it could be lifting a heavy box. It could be not necessarily the load, but the repetitive nature to a movement of lifting a load. So there are all these different movements, postures, positions, loads, repetition, duration. All of these things can sort of build together and are all variables that can trigger pain. And as I mentioned before, it's the removal or minimization of these. And by minimization, I mean not getting to the threshold. So if your spine can tolerate lifting a box up once, but it can't tolerate doing it 10 times, and then the pain comes out, can we only get to 7 or 8 before it's triggered? Can we then rest, recover, do whatever we need to do, blah, 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 and then go back and then do the final 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it is before we hit that threshold? That's what will remove, reduce, relieve lower back pain, is being able to understand those variables, being able to understand the movements, the postures, the positions, the loads that are going to trigger your pain, and then being able to either remove them completely, depending on what they are, or just minimizing them as much as is possible, or managing them in a way that you can still do the 10 lifts, but you break the 10 lifts up into 2 5s, or to 2 3s and a 4, or whatever it may be. So you get the 10 lifts done, but you manage it in a way that it doesn't aggravate the lower back. Now, those are just some random examples. That doesn't mean that's your lower back pain, or it is a problem for anyone. It just means that the principle within that is that's how we need to be able to manage these triggers. So what we need to be able to do is manage all of those. And what I can say now, because I've talked about lifting, exercise is a problem, or can be a problem, because of the frequency, the intensity, the duration at which we do them. So if we don't have the ability and the capacity within the musculature of the core to be able to cope with the repetitions that we're doing, the load that we're doing, the amount of frequency, the amount of times per week that we're doing, then what's going to happen is eventually the muscles are going to not stop working, but they're not going to work as well. And then eventually stress is going to become so much on the spine or the lower back or the muscles of the lower back, and then it's going to start causing a problem. So we have to identify all of that, and then if we then layer our preventative core strength exercise, we're just adding to the load that we're already doing. So it's understanding the role of exercise. We need to remove those triggers first to then be able to build the capacity of the core back up. And again, that doesn't then necessarily mean going straight into core strength, because strength is about being able to tolerate load. If the muscles aren't firing at the right time, which is a stability, then it doesn't matter how strong your muscles are, because they're not firing at the right time. Because if we go back to the example of the micro movement, if the micro movement happens, but your core muscles don't fire at the right time, then your core muscles can be as strong as they like to be. If they're not firing at the right time, that micro movement is going to happen, and there's going to be potential to trigger the pain. So we have to understand that stability and the timing of the muscles is more important. So core stability will come before core strength if we've identified it as a micro movement. And then we have the core endurance, which is the ability for it to keep firing at the right time without fatiguing. Because again, if we need to lift that box 10 times, but our core muscles can only manage 8, then we need to build that capacity up to 10, which is where endurance comes in. And then core strength is the next part to that, which is the ability to tolerate more load. So it's not that we're lifting the box now, it's now that we're lifting a very heavy box and the ability to tolerate that. And if you go to the links below, that will go through to my how to overcome lower back pain online consultation and coaching. But I also have a how to build core strength and stability online program, which has that in mind. It builds core stability first with endurance, then we focus on strength, and then we move on to speed strength. But what we've got to do first is get the muscles activating, get the spine stable, get it doing that over a period of time, and then building its capacity for load. So with regards to, again, overcoming lower back pain, we have to understand the role of exercise within that, because it's not necessarily a preventative one. It's more a minimization of risk and ability to tolerate load, and that doesn't necessarily come at the start of a program. So to go full circle and sort of bring us back to the core strength and what it's used for, is we understand what the exercise is now: stability, endurance, strength. We've talked about the triggers. So how we use exercise is, as we come to an understanding of the triggers and we start putting everyday practical postural habits, like movement habits, correcting those, as we start putting that in place and we start taking away the triggers, we can start then putting in, with exercise, those components of core stability, of core endurance, of core strength, and building the core back up. But if we just go, as I mentioned at the start, if we just go with the exercise, we've always got at the foundation of that, we've got these triggers. So if sitting brings on our pain, and I don't know, let's say 15 minutes worth of sitting, so if you sit down for 15 minutes and your pain comes on, you can have as strong a core as you like. That does not mean that your lower back pain is going to be reduced when you sit for longer than 15 minutes. So we have to come to that understanding. There are limitations to what exercise can do for lower back pain. But if we learn about lower back pain, if we learn about the role of exercise within that, then we can start using exercise to our advantage rather than our detriment, because there are a lot of people out there who are prescribing exercise as a means of, well, greater health and fitness, but also as a rehabilitation tool. But it's generally not exercise on its own. That is the rehabilitation tool. What is the rehabilitation tool is a greater package of tools, if you will. So the removal of these triggers using postures, position, or modified postures, positions, movements, and loads. So we have to come to that understanding, and that is sort of the long answer to why are we doing core strength if we have lower back pain. Again, if it's used in the right way, it's perfectly fine. If it's used in the wrong way, it's probably not going to do anything. You may get lucky and it does exactly what you want it to do, but without understanding that, then it's possibly just going to be a repeating cycle of pain, relief, pain, relief, pain, relief, so on and so forth. And if you're in that pattern, there's a good chance that pattern will continue until something is changed or done differently. So that is my answer to the question, why are we doing core strength if it doesn't help reduce pain? So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris. I'll speak to you in the next episode.